As a creator, you have probably looked, searched, and researched ways on how to get your images to look like film. And Dehancer might actually just be one of those tools to help you get there. Now, these days, all I hear is personal brand. And as a creator, you might ask, what does that mean? Well, a personal brand is probably something that will help you stand out, make you unique, and make you what you are as a person. That's your personal brand. And so one way that we can get to having a unique and identifiable personal brand is through color grading and making our images look like a certain way, so that when people see that, kind of like Wes Anderson, when they see his movies, they like exactly know who it is that's directing that movie. And so I'm gonna help you take your footage to look like this to this. And yes, I am color grading on Rec 709 footage. You do not need log footage to color grade. Just a disclaimer, Dehancer did reach out to me about reviewing their product, and they did kindly give me a coupon code. So if you would like to get 10% off Dehancer today, coupon code will be Ernest10. So shout outs to Dehancer for that one. Just a quick little background on what Dehancer is. So I did a little bit of research, and this is what I found. Dehancer came to life in 2014 through Pavel Kosenko, who's had 30 years of film experience and 10 years in digital photography. I mean, if you look at this guy's work, I'm pretty sure he knows what he's doing with Dehancer. The idea behind it is to empower artists in shooting more and less time in processing. And so after years of development and experimentation, Dehancer has become a widely known plugin for programs such as Davinci Resolve, Adobe Premiere, Lightroom, and the list goes on and on. And so today I'm going to be going through Dehancer on Davinci Resolve specifically. Now, here are a list of tools that are included in Dehancer. There's so many and it can be overwhelming, but we'll go through all of them so that you are aware of what they do. So I actually went on Dehancer's website and looked through all the descriptions of each tool so you don't have to read through them all yourself. Alright guys, so we are in the color page here. We're gonna go ahead and pop Dehancer. One way to collapse all these columns into one is to hold Alt and click, and that'll collapse all these columns, which is very convenient because there's so many tools here. And so tool number one, we have your input. So basically this is where you have your input space. You want to go ahead and put the correct source that you're working with. Today we're doing Rec 709, so we're going to leave that there. Now this is your exposure comp. You're going to go ahead and this is a technical correction to your source media. It affects the image before any Dehancer effects. Kind of just like a basic exposure correction here. This is it's the exact same thing as exposure, but for temperature and tint. There we go. Pull it to the left, it's cooler. Pull to the right, it's warmer. Now we have the same thing for tint. More green, more magenta. Now we have your defringe tool. So this helps with chromatic aberrations in halation and bloom. I don't have any in here right now, but that's what that does. So that's your tools. Now we got your film profiles. So this is where you have all the film profiles, such as Cinestel 800T, you got Kodak Gold 200, and you got your classic Kodak Vision 3s. There's a ton of options to choose from here, and so I would just spend some time to look through each and every one of them, see which one you like when you are going through your grade on Dehancer. Now this is your push and pull. So according to Dehancer, this is a creative tool to adjust the image's overall color contrast. As you can see. Oh, I don't even have it enabled. Boom. As you see, the contrast is changing a little bit, as well as the color as you pull it left to right. Now this is Film Developer. So this is a tool when you are working with a log source and you don't know what profile it is in for proper conversion. And so it essentially lets you create your own recipe for developing images. All right, and so I'm just gonna turn this on. You got your color boost. This is where you gently increase and decrease overall saturation without clipping. Then we have gamma correction. So this is where your midtones get shifted towards shadows or the highlights. And then we have color separation. This is where the saturation is reduced at the most intense colors first, and then from there it's the medium to low saturation remains pretty much almost unaffected here. All right, that's Film Developer. You have Film Compression. So this basically helps retain your highlights for a better roll-off on the image. Just popping it on, as you can see, the highlights in my image are having a nicer roll-off without. So your impact basically means the higher it goes, the more impact of the compression is happening in the highlights to midtones. The white point helps kind of increase and decrease your saturation. If you want to pull it to your left, it has a bit more, not saturation, excuse me, contrast. To the right, it has less contrast, and you're adjusting the white point of your image. And the tonal range determines how much compression is happening from highlights to shadows. And so less range equals less compression, more range equals highlights to shadows. Then you got color density. This is the color intensity of compressed ranges. And so 0 is the lowest saturation in highlights. Yeah, there you go. So as you can see, the lower the density, it's less saturation in the highlights. And at 100, it's max saturation. Okay, it's film compression. Then we got expand, so this is where you get to adjust the black and white points to fit the dynamic range of the color space. So boom. As you can see on my scopes, I still have some room to pull. I could, if I wanted to, I could pull it up. I have some blacks, and I could pull it down. It's pretty close. This part of the image is pretty close to being crushed, so we don't want to crush that, but if we wanted to, we could pull that down. And so we have color mode. This basically is helpful for unwanted color shifts or oversaturation. What we could do is turn this into luma, and it only affects the luminance, not color. Changes in contrast doesn't affect saturation, by the way. Okay, now we got print, so this is probably where you're going to be using this tool 100% of the time when you open Dehancer. So you got different kinds of print mediums: Cineon film log. Oh, it's not on. You got Fujifilm 3513, Kodak 2383, and you got Kodak Endura glossy paper. So all those kind of have different attributes. You would choose the one to your liking. And this is where you have your target whites, or you can adjust the temperature of the printing light source. See, cooler, warmer. And you got exposure. It's pretty self-explanatory, but it does the exposure correction naturally affects contrast here. As you can see, tonal contrast, you can add more punch by increasing or softening by decreasing. Naturally affects exposure here. And we got color density. So this is where your perceptual saturation control. Okay. And then you got saturation. This is traditional saturation control slider. No saturation, 100%. Now, analog range limiters improves the details of the extreme ends of tonal range. So as you can see, it does kind of cut back on the contrast here, but it does bring back the details in those darker parts or the lighter parts of the image. It just squeezes the image down. All right, then we got color head. So this is basically where you do printer lights or manipulate the color channels. Boom, boom, boom. Magenta to green, cyan to red, pretty self-explanatory. Then we got shadows, mids, and highlights. So you can shift these sliders from warmer to cooler. And so if you want your shadows to be a little bit warmer, pull it there, cooler there, vice versa. Okay. And then you got your preserve exposure, compensates exposure change. Okay, and then you got impact, it's kind of like an opacity slider. So affects how much of the tool you want affected on the image. All right, then we got film grain. See, you just got a whole list of your film profiles here. 8, 16, 35, 65. We're gonna go ahead and go into custom, so you can actually make your own custom grain structure. So you got size, changes granularity. You got lower for smaller, larger or higher for bigger. And you got the amount, which is the total amount of grain generated. There you go. Film resolution. Lower makes quality blurry, so it's just for the sake of the example. There you go. Shadows. This, shadows, midtones, and highlights, you can set the grain amount of each individually. It's interesting. All right, and then you got chroma, which is determines the saturation of dye granules. Okay, so as you can see, there's a little bit more color happening versus when you pull it down, it's just black and white. You got negative and positive film types. Positive just has less grain pronounced in the highlights. Negative is a lot more crunchy. Yeah, and the analog is more lifelike. Noise is more like a low resolution, high performing. It's good for doing drafts and dailies. Okay, that's film grain. Halation. Okay, we got different kinds of profiles similar to grain. 8, 16, 35, 65. We're gonna go to custom. You got your source limiter. All right, so this is the minimum light source producing halation. Slide it down, you can see more here. Background gain, decreasing the effect eliminates effect over lighter backgrounds. The smoothness increases, reduce effect around the point. And then decrease leads to most detailed halos. Okay. Local diffusion changes spread of the halos. Global diffusion changes more for midtones. You got amplify, makes effect more pronounced toward yellow hues. You got hue, self-explanatory, red to yellow, to hue shift. And then you got blue comp, which just compresses the blues to counterbalance the effect. See, it makes it a little bit more blue when you shift it to the left. Then you got impact. Again, it's like an opacity slider. And then we got mask mode. Isolate the effect to preview. Honestly, there you go. All right, halation. Got bloom. So bloom is the brightness threshold of where the effect appears. Same thing, 8. As halation and film grain, you got 8, 16, 35, and 65. You got custom. You're gonna look at these sliders. You got highlights. Let's see. You know what? This is a little different than what I remember using to practice. So we're gonna skip highlights. You got your source limiter, cut off blooming at lower source, details, lower equals contained, and then higher means it's a slight expansion, diffusion, less is smaller, more equals larger, as you can see. And you got amplify, see it kind of gives it like an edge. And you push it to the right, kind of softens when you go to the left. Okay, save lights, protects the highlights from clipping with bloom effect. You got saturation, bloom naturally, inherits a hue and saturation of a light source. All right, and then you got your impact opacity slider basically, and you got your mask mode. All right, that's bloom. Film damage. So here, this is where the artifacts appear physically on actual film. You got 8, 16, 35, 65, same thing. So you got dust. I'm gonna go through these pretty quick. Dust, hairs, scratches. They all kind of do the same, have the exact same sliders, but for the sake of this example, we're just gonna turn on one. So this is the amount. So the higher it is, the more you're seeing dust on there. Then you got the scale, this magnifies particles. So right is bigger, left is smaller. You get the size, adjust the ratio between the artifacts of different sizes. And then you got white and black. This is the ratio between white and black artifacts that appear. Okay. Then we got your total amount. So basically this is the amount of all the artifacts that are on. And then you have the global period. This is how evenly artifacts are spread for the ones that are on. Then you got global opacity, which adjusts the transparency of the effect. Then global chromacity, this is adjust the saturation of artifacts. Amount jitter, I could not find what this meant online, so we're gonna skip that. All right, almost there, guys. We got film breadth. Okay, so this is when there's an uneven change in exposure and contrast as the film is moving like frame by frame. And so we got all your presets, then you got custom. So the period is, the larger the number, the smoother the fluctuations change. And you got exposure, tonal contrast, and color. So the greater the values are, the more fluctuations there are. Okay. And then impact, that's your opacity slider. All right, and you got gate weave. So this is like the physical movement of film as it's pulled through a projector or scanner. Here's your presets again. Custom. Period is the number of frames of shifts that occur. Then you got, let's turn that on so you know what it looks like. So you got your period. The larger the numbers, the smoother it is. Okay, and then you got the amplitude, X and Y. So it's like the amplitude of shifts for each plane. This is for X, this is for Y. So if you just play it. Okay, and then you got rotation. This is the maximum of rotations happening randomly. Your impact is your opacity. All right, and then you got overscan. This is when you see the gates included onto the frame. It's like the things that are on the side of the image when you scan film. As you can see, we'll just turn them on. Boom. All right, you got different kinds here, all sorts. We're not gonna go through all of them. I encourage you to explore, but this is the gate shape. Neat, normal is a standard frame with slightly rounded corners. This neat, sharp. This is a frame with sharper corners, almost no rounding. And then you got neat, rounded, frame with the corners, rounded to a large radius. And you got off. This is when the film gate is disabled. And then positive is just when it's a positive film, and negative and it's show up as is. Orientation, pretty self-explanatory. Vertical, horizontal. Then you got exposure, which makes the perforations more or less pronounced. You see, boom, left, boom. And you got scale. It's kind of basically a crops in. Lens zoom, this is when the zoom seen within the gate. Okay, offset X, Y, you can adjust the position of the image within the gate. So you got the gate defocus, this blurs the edges of the gate. All right, you can flip it. Static or not static. All right, see it kind of moves. All right. Final stretch, vignettes. So you got vignettes. This is a contrast in exposure values. Okay. A negative vignette just means darker. Positive means lighter. Boom, boom. And this is the size. You can change the size of the mask. So we're gonna just go ahead and do mask mode, and you can see here's a vignette. Do it vertical or horizontal. Feathers just feathers out from the mask, how much the effect spreads out. This is, you can adjust the positioning of the vignette here. Monitor, you got false color, so you can see how your image is being exposed by IREs. This is a great tool. This is one of my favorites. Clipping indication, it just tells you where the images are being clipped. See, it's being clipped at the bottom there, crushed blacks. All right, and then this is where you have output. You got your overall tonal impact. This is an opacity for all the effects that are being used. Okay, and then you have your LUT generator. So if you have a certain look that you've settled on and you want to save it for future uses and future projects, this is where you would want to generate a LUT. So you just throw it onto your footage next time you want to use it. And then you got quality, so normal fast is your computer processes quicker, but it's a lower quality, and vice versa. And so we want to keep it on normal fast so that when you're working through the project, it's working as quickly as it can and it's not slowing down as you're working through it. All right, that's all the tools in Dehancer. We're gonna go ahead and look at the iOS version. So they have an iOS version. So I'm gonna hop in there and we're gonna go through it together. All right, guys, we're gonna hop into the Dehancer iOS. So this is your opening page. All right, already got a lot of things going on here. So we're just gonna go for original. So there's a ton of presets. Just like Dehancer for Davinci, you got a bunch of options to choose from, which is incredible. Let's see, let's just pick one. So we got Fuji Color C200, boom. Kodak Vision 3 50D 2383. Honestly, a lot of these look incredible. Like, you wouldn't even really need to do a lot of editing to get a good image here. All right. And so, again, ton of presets. I would look through these and see which ones you like before you settle on one. But we're just gonna go ahead and start editing. Let's look at the edit tab. Boom. So very similar process here. So here's your crop. If you want to just crop your image, pretty self-explanatory stuff. Very cool tip. If you want to reset a slider here, you want to go ahead and double tap that, like so. If you want to reset, hit that little circle arrow, rotations, flip. Now you got all sorts of aspect ratios to choose from. Say we just want to do 1:1, okay, something like that. And then you got source. So this is where you do your exposure comp, very similar to our Davinci walkthrough. You can set the exposure before any effects here. Same with the temperature and the tint. Okay. And then you got your film stocks, so a bunch to choose from here. Okay. Also, if you want to turn on and turn off an effect, so you got, if you want to turn on films or turn it off, we have it on right now. Just click that and then it's off. So we're going to go to developer, increase the contrast, adjust your gamma correction here, have some color separation. Then you got your compression here. If you want your highlights to have softer highlight roll off. Okay. Expand, you can set the black points and the white point. And if you want to change it to Luma color mode. Print, this is where you can choose your print. So you can either go to Kodak, glossy paper, Fuji 35, or 3513, or 2383. Or you can skip the last one, or you can do linear. Lots of options here. And you can set the exposure, print, and the tonal contrast. This kind of affects saturation and contrast. Then we got your color head. Again, RGB channels. Excuse me. See, there's a bunch of here that I skipped. Color density and print. Alright, if you want to compress, squeeze your image a little bit more, you would hit analog range limiter. Then you got your shadow tones, midtones, highlights if you want to warmer or cooler. So we want to preserve exposure and impact. Film grain. You got all the presets and the custom. Halation, same thing. Like that, boom. Then you got bloom. You got vignette you can set. Very, very intuitive. It's really cool. You got film damage if you would like, and overscan. Honestly, the app is really, really good, especially if you're doing a lot of your stuff on the phone. You could easily just get in there and start grading your footage immediately, especially if you're not working with log footage. I think it's fantastic and very intuitive, very easy to use. And yeah, especially if you're a beginner, it's a really good tool. So we made it to the end, guys. We do have some pros and cons to go over. The pros are that there are a ton of features that are included in Dehancer, giving you a lot of flexibility, but also creative control and expression on how you want to color grade or create a specific look to an image. With that, Dehancer is a great tool for look development, kind of creating an overall color grade for a project, and then working underneath that to do more local adjustments to the footage and clips. And my favorite thing about Dehancer is the false color feature. I think it's so good in letting you look at how your image is exposed. I actually have a specific node just for false color in my node tree template that I use, which helps me keep eyes on how the entire image is exposed. And with that, I do love the abundance of film stocks you could choose from. It's really cool that they're not only including motion picture film stocks, but also including photography ones. So you have your infamous Portrait 400 that you could use in your project. Lastly, I love that it's all in one node and it's not an entire power grade. So it kind of keeps things simple in that way, how everything is located in one node. Now the cons, with all the features and whatnot, it does get overwhelming with how much there is to explore with Dehancer. Another thing that I don't like about Dehancer is the drop-down menu system. And I would prefer to have all the menus just be closed when you open Dehancer for the first time. It all kind of just is, they're all open, and you have to use your alt-click technique to close and collapse everything so that you can see through all the features. And it would be cool to somehow be able to implement a feature where maybe the drop-down menu is highlighted, or there's a marker showing you which ones are enabled without having to open them and then see if it's the enable checkbox is checked or not. And lastly, it would be really nice to have all of the features checked off so that you start off on a clean slate. But I believe some of them are automatically turned on, like the film stock print feature and grain. And so once you open it, boom, they're already loaded in. It would be nice to just start off fresh so that you can kind of go through your steps from the ground up. But overall, Dehancer is a great tool. Like I said at the beginning of this video, if you are looking to have a brand identity and be able to have a specific grade perhaps to your videos to make you stand out, or if you're just looking to color grade your videos more extensively than you would like, Dehancer is a fantastic tool, and there's a lot of options to explore and just get really creative with that. All right, guys, this is the end. Once again, if you are interested in seeing a full breakdown of how I implement Dehancer into my full workflow, go ahead and watch the next video, and I'll see you there. Thanks, guys.